Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping everyone can hear me clearly. I'd like to welcome you to the Canadian Breast Cancer Network's webinar today, Understanding Private Insurance. My name is Jen Gordon, and I'm the Director of Education here at CBCN. We are so pleased to be partnering with the OmbudService for Life and Health Insurance on this webinar, and we're looking forward to the expertise that they will be sharing with us today. We'd also like to thank Pfizer Canada, who generously provided financial support for this webinar. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be available for on-demand viewing at our website, cbcn.ca. So if you know anyone who you feel may benefit from this information, please feel free to have them go to our website after the webinar or any time in the next few weeks, and it will be up. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar, and we will aim to address as many as possible. You can submit a question by typing it into the Q&A box that's at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So I'd now like to introduce our speaker today, Brigitte Kent, who is joining us from the OmbudService for Life and Health Insurance. She has been with the OmbudService since 2011 and joined as the General Manager and was responsible for operations in both its Montreal and Toronto offices. In 2016, she was also appointed Acting Executive Director, which continues to be her role today. And Brigitte has more than 20 years of experience in disability claims management, complaint resolution, and call center operations, as well as human resource and extensive personnel management experience. She first started managing disability claims, including work-related incidents and employee life insurance claims with the Bank of Montreal. Subsequently, Brigitte joined Canadian Benefits Management Limited and Sidon Health Management, where she was responsible for managing their short-term disability third-party administration operations. So welcome, Brigitte. Thank you for being here with us today. I'll now turn the webinar over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Jan, for inviting us today. We are very pleased with the opportunity to be able to speak to everybody today. And as Jen said, please don't hesitate to post questions as I go through the presentation. You don't need to wait until the end, and I'll do my best to answer all the questions you might have. So let's get started. As the title of the presentation explains, today our goal is to help you better understand life and health insurance products. First on the agenda today is an overview of the various life and health insurance products and the coverage that each offers. Secondly, we'll talk about OLHI's role in the complaint process and how we can help you. And last but certainly not least, we will address some common inquiries or concerns that consumers may have. So if we look at the different types of insurance in the life and health insurance industry, there's typically three types of insurance. There's group insurance, individual insurance, which is often referred to as private insurance, and creditors group insurance. And the coverage that each offers depends on the type of insurance you're purchasing. If we look at group insurance first, group insurance is a single contract that covers a group of people. So typically the policy owner is an employer or an entity such as a labor organization. And the policy covers the employees or members of the group and often extends the coverage to their dependents as well. What's important to note here is that the policy owner, for example the employer, is the one who determines what the plan coverage is. So these plans cannot be customized for individuals that are covered by the plan. So they're usually basic templates that's offered to all members of that group. If we look at individual insurance now, like I said, often known as private insurance, this is a type of insurance in which a single contract covers one individual in particular. So individual plans are policies that you purchase for yourself and or your dependents, and they can be customized to meet your specific needs. Important to note when you're dealing with individual insurance, some contracts are underwritten before the contract is issued, and others at the time that you submit a claim. So what does underwriting mean? It's a very common term in the insurance industry, but not often understood by consumers. So what it is, it's the process that the insurance company will go through to determine the risk involved with issuing the insurance policy. So if they feel there are factors that make it risky to insure you, they may often choose either to deny you the coverage or they'll increase your premiums to offset that risk. Now if we move on to creditors group, creditor insurance is a type of insurance that helps you pay down or even pay off your loan or credit card if you die or if you become disabled. It's often offered through financial institutions, auto dealers, mortgage brokers, retailers, or credit card companies when you initially take on that debt. What's important to note here is to be careful. A lot of individuals who are selling these products are actually not very familiar with them at all. So it's very, very important to read the contract carefully, make sure you answer any questions honestly and accurately, and make sure that before you sign anything that you really do understand. Because once you sign, you are now bound by the terms of the contract. Often when you're asked to sign, it says, I have read and understood. So if you sign off, you're saying that you read and understood. So you can't come back later and say, oh, well, I didn't understand that part. So it's very, very important that you read it and understand what the coverage is. So let's take a look now at the different life and health insurance products, and we'll focus primarily on the individual insurance portion of them. So if we look, the different products that we're going to discuss today are supplementary health insurance, disability insurance, travel insurance, life insurance, and we'll also talk about long-term care insurance. So let's start with the supplementary health insurance. So this health insurance pays part of or all of your expenses when you see a medical professional or purchase health care services or products. Now, Canadians have access to both public and private health insurance plans. So each province offers health coverage. And individual plans are meant to enhance the coverage that you already have, either through provincial coverage that's offered and or any group insurance that you have. Other health insurance plans include critical illness, which is type of insurance where the insurance company will pay you a lump sum of money if you're diagnosed with a specific illness or condition. And when you're looking at critical illness coverage, the policy always clearly defines what those conditions are that you would be covered for. Things to consider when you're looking at supplementary health insurance. Although a cancer diagnosis will have little or no impact on your provincial health coverage or any existing group plan that you're already enrolled in at the time of the diagnosis, it is unlikely that you'll be able to obtain new coverage. Insurance companies will consider this type of diagnosis a high risk. They feel it's risky to insure individuals who have already been diagnosed with cancer. And that's regardless of whether you're in remission or not currently experiencing any symptoms or following any treatment. And in these cases, even if the insurance company was to determine that they're willing to take that risk on, what they would do is they would increase your premiums to offset that risk. And in most cases, that leads to the insurance coverage being unaffordable for most consumers. We'll move on now to travel insurance. So in Canada, your provincial health insurance plan looks after your hospital and medical expenses, and very rarely do you see a bill. But once you travel outside of Canada, or even outside of your home province, your coverage under your provincial health plan is either limited or null. The good news is that the difference can be made up by purchasing some travel insurance. Now, travel insurance in its broadest form is designed to pay for certain unexpected costs that may arise when you're traveling. These can include emergency hospital or medical costs. It can include trip cancellation, lost baggage, and accidental death insurance. But it's important to note that not all plans cover all of these components. For example, the trip cancellation insurance you buy when you book your holiday may not include health insurance. So you have to be sure to understand what type of protection that you're buying and whether it meets your needs. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's always okay to ask questions before you accept any, any policy contract. Things to consider when you look at travel insurance. it's not only important to ensure you understand what the coverage is and when, but it's also important to make sure that you answer any medical questions that are asked accurately. Now, most travel policies are underwritten only after you make a claim. So this means that when you submit your claim, only then will the insurance look at your medical history. When they do that, if they find out that you didn't answer any of the questions properly or truthfully, they'll not only deny your claim, but they'll also cancel your policy. So anything else that happens after, you're not covered for either. This is often referred to as pre-existing conditions. It's a common word in the industry. And that means they're looking for conditions that you had before you got the coverage. And like I said, it's important to read the contract because some of them will be, if you saw a doctor or got any treatment or did anything like that 30 days before, sometimes it's 60 days before, sometimes it's 90 days before. So again, it's really important to look at the policy closely, but also to ask questions. You can ask the insurance company for clarification sometimes on some of the questions they're asking, but also not a bad idea if you're not sure to consult with your doctor before you sign off. Often in a lot of these questions, they'll put the medical word for certain conditions, and you may not necessarily understand that that's what you've been diagnosed with, so that's where consulting your doctor can be very helpful. Something as simple as going to see your doctor to refill a prescription before you leave is considered a medical appointment and could nullify your policy. We'll move on. There we go. We'll move on to life insurance now. So life insurance is a way to protect your survivors and dependents against financial hardship when you die. Now, there are many different types of life insurance, and understanding which one is best for you can be very complicated and honestly very overwhelming. And when you're looking at life insurance, we recommend working with a broker, someone that has the in-depth knowledge of the various products and who can help you determine what product best meets your specific needs. Now, as it is with travel insurance, answering any medical questions is crucial because if you don't answer correctly, it could mean that your loved ones will not receive any payment after your death. Some insurance companies will actually underwrite beforehand, and it's not uncommon. And what they would do, besides asking for your medical history, is often they'll ask that you undergo a medical assessment, and that's quite common. So don't be alarmed if that's what they ask you to do. Again, same as with a lot of these other products, obtaining life insurance coverage could be next to impossible after you've been diagnosed with cancer. Insurance companies will see that as a high risk for them. And if they, like I said before, if they choose to insure you, the premiums are going to be quite high. Moving on now to disability insurance. Disability, whether it's sudden or because of a degenerative condition, can rob you of your ability to earn a living. Disability insurance is a type of coverage that provides you with income when you're not able to work due to a disabling medical condition. So most people recognize the need for life insurance, but many do not understand the need for disability insurance. The fact is, when you're disabled because of an illness or injury, your income stops, but your bills don't. So interesting facts, 1 in 3 people on average will be disabled for 90 days or more at least once before they reach age 65. And also, a disability can last for months, but sometimes it can last for years depending on what it is. Now, group disability insurance is tied in with your employment. So, if you have coverage through your employer, you can't work, then you get that coverage. However, individual plans may still cover you if you remain disabled, but stop being an employee. So if your employment ends for some reason, these individual plans will give you the coverage you need. And also these plans can be customized to meet your specific needs. Note, however, that individual disability insurance does cost more than most group plans. In fact, some of the employers will actually pay the entire cost of the coverage. So when you're looking to compare, take a look at your group coverage first to see if it meets your needs. And if not, then only then get disability insurance to sort of offset what you're not covered for, because they can be quite costly. Again, as with other products, you know, it may be very difficult for somebody with a cancer diagnosis to get a disability insurance policy. But also, one thing that's important to know, if you have group coverage and your employment ends for some reason, in most cases, insurance companies will offer to convert your group policy to an individual policy without having to qualify medically. So that's very important, especially if you've already been diagnosed with something, because it allows you to take that group coverage, flip it into an individual policy or private policy, personal policy, without having them dig into your medical history. And usually most contracts allow 30 days for this to be done after your employment ends, so it's important for you to move quickly. Now we'll talk a little bit about long-term care. So long-term care is a very unique product. It will allow you to pay for expensive medical support if you become unable to take care of yourself. Often insurance companies will refer to that as activities of daily living. So the type of coverage can be customized to meet your needs and helps pay for things like home nursing care or even someone to clean your house if you can't do it yourself. It may also help pay for various supports you may need if you are diagnosed with a cognitive impairment such as dementia or Alzheimer's. This type of coverage, although can be very helpful, it can be quite costly as well. And again, especially if you've already been diagnosed with a condition, that may lead you to needing that assistance in the near future. Now, if we look at just general facts, cancer continues to be the primary cause of death among Canadians. Unluckily, it can develop at any age, but the disease typically affects Canadians who are 50 years older or beyond. Better quality medication and several scientific developments have also contributed to improved quality of life for individuals in cancer remission, and in many cases have helped people who are fighting against cancer or have fought against cancer to live longer. Luckily, improvements in technology and improved measures in cancer screening have helped to detect many cancers in its earlier stages in the past 20 years. However, still, as per the Canadian Cancer Society, 1 out of 2 Canadians will be diagnosed at some stage in their life, with 1 out of 4 ultimately dying of the disease. So if we look at these statistics, it's important for people to consider getting the types of coverage we've spoken about today. Often it will be too late for you to get the coverage after you've been diagnosed, but if you're able to get the coverage, if you're not able to get the coverage because of your health situation, you should still consider getting it for your dependents, so your spouse, your children, who may end up needing it down the line. Are there any questions on the products so far? I'm not seeing any questions come up. Maybe I'll pause here for a second. Any questions relating to the different products that I talked about?
And again, for anyone looking to ask a question, there is the Q&A box at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can just type the question into.
Okay, well, I'll move on, but please don't hesitate to pop up those questions if there are any at any point. So now I'm going to move on to talk about us, OLHI. We're Canada's independent complaint resolution service for consumers of Canadian life and health insurance. So what does that mean? We're here to resolve complaints, insurance company complaints about life, disability, health benefits, travel, and certain investment products such as annuities and segregated funds. We also provide general information about the life and health insurance industry. Our services are free, and we are bilingual service as well, available to any consumer in Canada whose insurance company is a member of ours. Canadian law requires most life insurance companies to be members of an independent dispute resolution service such as ours, but we are certainly the one of choice. To ensure impartiality, our operations are overseen by the Canadian Council of Insurance Regulators, as well as our board of directors, which is independent. And currently we have offices in Toronto, Edmonton, and Montreal, so our service is offered Canada-wide. If we look at some statistics, we serve over 87,000 consumers annually. And as I mentioned, insurance companies have to be members of ours for us to be able to offer the service, but 99% of all Canadian life and health insurance companies are our members. We provide independent information and complaint resolution services. And because we're free, we're a nice alternative to court action. Court not only takes a long time, but can be very costly. So we offer that service free of charge and with much shorter deadlines. Our staff are experts in their fields. We have bilingual staff with decades of experience. They all have extensive experience in handling industry complaints at all levels, and some are litigation lawyers, certified mediators, former senior vice presidents of claims or vice presidents of legal in some insurance companies, and some of them have actually been ombudsmen for our member companies. So we certainly have a vast variety of experience, but everybody is very, very talented and knowledgeable in the industry. We'll look now a little bit more at complaints by product. So which products do we see most? What complaints do people have the most? So every year, the top two products are disability and life. Some years we get more life complaints than disability, but the pattern year over year has been typically that they're the top two. Now that's not surprising because both those products, so disability and life insurance, are the most complicated products that the industry offers. And it's also the most widely sold. So the more product you have, the more complicated it is. It's logical to expect to get more complaints about those products. Also interesting to note on this slide, if you look at our travel complaints, it's only 6.7%, and actually it's dropped over the last 3 years. Unfortunately, the perception out there is different because a lot of the media stories that hit the papers have to do with travel insurance, but it really is a small percentage of the complaints that we see in the industry. If we look at regional breakdown, the volumes by province, you can see that the bulk of our complaints come out of Ontario and Quebec. Again, very populated provinces, so you know it's relative to the population in those provinces. And we see that, you know, something like if you look at British Columbia, we have very low numbers in the west, and it's not proportionate to the population in those areas. So does that mean that people don't have complaints out there? No. We believe that individuals in the other regions are just not aware that OLHI is here to help. So the company as a whole is really working towards improving that, which is one of the main reasons we opened an office in Western Canada last year. We want to really get the message out that we're here to help so people know they can turn to us. If we look at our process, so our help is free, prompt, and impartial. We guide consumers through the complaint resolution by doing a few things. First, we answer questions about their complaint or their policy. We'll tell you how to contact your life or health insurance company with your complaint if you haven't already done this. One of the prerequisites to coming to OLHI for help is you have to complete the internal complaint process that the insurance company has first. So one will help you find out what that is and how to do it. And then if you haven't gotten their final position on the matter within 90 days, then we can take on your complaint. Insurance companies have 90 days from the time that you first start their complaint process to render their final, what we call in the industry, final position letter. So basically they say, look, you've exhausted all your opportunities here, you've gone through the complaint process, now you can go to OLHI. And then we'll review your complaint if you're still not happy with the final decision, and we'll see if we can find grounds to negotiate settlement. So if we look at the slide, the first step obviously is for the consumer to contact us. Once the consumer contacts us, there's a few things we need from them before we can proceed. So we do have an authorization form that is required. We're dealing with very sensitive information, so that protects all parties. And then we'll also ask the consumer to send us all of their documents that are related to their complaint. So we get a full picture of what the consumer situation is. We will also do an in-depth interview with the consumer to make sure we really understand their position and what the complaint is. Once we have everything from the consumer, then we reach out to the insurance company and we ask for a complete copy of their file as well. They also sign that authorization form, so all three parties are bound to the same terms. The insurance companies have 30 days to get their file to us. In most cases, a lot of them far exceed that, but that's the agreement that we've reached with insurance companies. We give them 30 days. Once we have everything, so the full picture from the consumer and the full picture from the insurance company, then we'll move to a complete review of all the documents. Once we've reviewed all the documents, we'll decide whether we feel there are grounds to negotiate. And if so, the complaint is then escalated to the next level in our process. And the next level is a review by one of our OmbudService officers. And they will actually enter into negotiations between the parties to try and reach a settlement. If at that first level, however, once we've reviewed your file, if we find there are no grounds to negotiate, we will issue a letter to you and explain why there aren't. The biggest struggle in the industry is people don't understand the products. They don't understand what they're covered for. They don't understand what they bought. So we'll be able to explain to the consumer, and we do everything in plain language. So we take away all of those complicated insurance words and put it in a way that you understand why the insurance company has made the decision that they have. So we don't advocate for the consumer. We also don't advocate for the insurance company. We truly are impartial, and we look at all the facts and do a thorough and unbiased review. And one thing to note, too, is our recommendations at all levels are non-binding. So that means that we can't enforce a settlement on the parties. However, we are very proud to say that to date, any final recommendation that we've made to our member companies has been accepted. So our process works, and it works really well. Okay, so now we'll move through what I call our funnel. So when we're looking at volumes, last year, our last fiscal year, OLHI received 2,632 complaints from consumers. We only moved, we got that many inquiries. Of those 2,632 inquiries, on 337 of those cases, we asked consumers to submit their written documents. So there's a big jump from the over 2,600 to 337. So in those cases, what happened is either they weren't at the right stage, they hadn't completed the complaint process with the insurance company yet, excuse me, or we found that they were outside our mandate. There are a few things that we're not able to take on, or their complaint was pretty straightforward, and during that call we were able to explain to them why the insurance company made the decision that they did. Of the 337 where we did ask for more information, we moved to a formal review of 179 cases. So that means that once we got the written documents that we needed, we determined that the complaint didn't require a review. There were facts that either, again, excluded it from our mandate or that clearly explained to us, and so that we could explain to the consumer why their claim was denied. And then of that 179, 26 of them actually moved to the actual investigation and negotiation with the insurance companies. So what does this mean? Clearly, it shows that in most cases, the insurance companies are making decisions in line with the contract terms. There's always the impression out there that they're the big bad insurance company and they want to say no just to save money, when in fact that truly isn't the case. I think, like I said before, the biggest struggle in the industry is understanding the products, understanding what you bought. And once we can clearly explain that, then consumers come to see why the decision was made to deny their claim. And even when you think about the amount of contracts that are issued in the industry in a year, the 2,632 is really a small number. But in those cases where there was something, we were able to negotiate a settlement with the consumer. Moving on. We've lately seen a few examples of unsatisfied consumers sharing their stories and complaints with the media. This is true, like I mentioned before, especially with travel insurance. So in certain cases, it's a way of encouraging the media and their target audiences to find a resolution to the issues by making it public and showing that the consumer, this also shows that the consumers are looking for fast resolution of their cases. They don't want to go through the process. They figure if they go to the media, they'll get some hype and maybe, pressure the insurance company to settle. Does this mean that Canadians are want to take their complaints to the media instead of OLHI? I don't believe so. Taking your complaint to the media doesn't necessarily get you a resolution, nor does it get you an independent, thorough review of all the facts of the case. The media tends to report on isolated cases, the ones that are going to generate a lot of public attention, sympathy, maybe even outrage. But it's that one claim that was denied versus the thousands of claims that are approved every year. Because again, if we look at that number, that 2632, that dwindled down to 26, again, it's a very small number when you look at all of the claims that are processed. So in most cases, the insurance companies are approving the claims. So it sort of gets distorted a little bit in the media and can lead people to have a false impression of the industry. So that's us in a nutshell. I will now again open the invitation to ask any questions. I know I've covered quite a bit, so I ask you to go ahead and ask me your questions.
Thanks, Bridget. And I guess maybe I'll start off because I did have a couple questions that have been submitted by patients who weren't necessarily able to join the webinar today,
okay,
but who are very interested in this topic and really helping to better understand how they can navigate their own insurance. So the first one is actually around long-term disability. And this patient asked, can your organization, so OLHI, help individuals who are having issues with their insurance company regarding long-term disability? For example, and I know in her situation, it was really around not just the paperwork, but the task of completing all the paperwork, but also the frequency of paperwork that she had to justify for continuing to be off work when her healthcare professionals really felt that she did need to be off work and wasn't able to return. And so if people are having, and there are quite a few complaints that we receive around long-term disability and everything that goes into that, are people able to connect with OLHI regarding those complaints, or do they really need to file even after they filed through their private insurance?
Individuals can certainly come to OLHI for help with long-term disability. One of the things that OLHI cannot look at is the individual processes that each insurance company has. So we can't help with that process. But if you're denied on the basis of not submitting medical or medical being insufficient, we can certainly help with that. Now, just to speak to that a little bit, Why do insurance companies ask for so many updates? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, with a disability case, when you start off on short-term disability, often the parameters of the policy are a lot tighter than once you fall into long-term disability. And some of the common words you'll hear are own occupation and any occupation. And that's a huge shift. It happens overnight for the person who's on disability who says, you know, nothing's changed, I'm just as sick today as I was yesterday. But the terms of the policy change. And it's, like I said, it's quite a drastic change. So most policies in the short-term phase will cover you if you're not able to do your own job. Once you jump into the long-term phase, they're looking to see if you can do any job. And that's a huge difference because it's not can you do your job description A, B, C, D, E. It's based on your experience, your knowledge, can you do other work? In some cases, and in most cases, yes, you can do a different kind of job or a different kind of different kinds of tasks. But again, it's hard for the person who's on disability to come to terms with that because overnight you didn't get better. You're just able to do certain things that could lead to employment for you. So that's one of the things. The other thing, too, that's important to note when we're dealing with any kind of disability coverage, whether it be short-term or long-term, is your doctor telling the insurance company that you can't work is not enough, and it will never be enough. The insurance companies need objective proof of your restrictions and limitations so that they can then look at your job description and the functions of your job to see if it really does disable you from doing your job. Or like I said, any job once you jump into the LTD phase. And that is a very, very different focus than your doctor has. And in a lot of cases, there's a relationship between the patient and the doctor. So, you know, the doctor advocates to say she can't work, she can't work, she can't work, you should take my word for it. But the insurance company is saying, that's fine, you're saying she can't work, but you need to prove to us why she can't work. So they want test results. They want notes, clinical notes from every time you saw your doctor. What did you talk about? What did you discuss? Did your treatment change? If it changed, how did it change? After it changed, is it improving? Is it better? So they'll ask for frequent updates like that to track the treatment that you're receiving and whether it's improving your functions or not. Does that help a little bit?
I think that, yeah, you gave a great overview. Thank you, Brigitte. We do have a couple more questions coming in. So Anne asked, is it possible to get critical illness insurance for myself after my cancer diagnosis?
Yes, you may very well get critical illness insurance, but one of the things they'll probably do is they won't cover cancer. So, you know, they may write a policy that says if you suddenly have heart failure or if you have a stroke or if you develop other kinds of conditions not related to the cancer diagnosis. Again, it goes back to that risk. If you've already been diagnosed with cancer and you buy a policy, a critical illness policy that covers you for cancer, they're already having to pay out before they even get your premiums. So you can get a policy, but in most cases they will exclude any diagnosis or condition that you get as a result of cancer. So if your cancer leads to another medical condition that's in the policy, they'll probably exclude that. But if you get it not related to your cancer, then they'll probably still pay out. Does that make sense?
It does. So I think that, and that's really helpful to know if people are, you know, considering that after the fact as well, because sometimes the assumption is once you have, you know, have received a diagnosis such as breast cancer, that you're excluded from a lot of things. So if that's, you know, a way you're able to get coverage for possible other health issues down the road, that's great to know.
Yeah. So for example, if you have breast cancer and then you suddenly develop a condition with your lungs, if it's as a result of a metastasis to your lung, they won't cover it. But if you develop lung disease,
or something totally unrelated.
Exactly, then chances are they'll cover it, yeah.
We have another question from Tricia who asks, can personal insurance be switched to disability? I'm not 100% sure what, Tricia, Bridget, do you understand that question? Or Tricia, maybe you can type in a little bit more specifics. I'm having a bit of a hard time understanding that.
Because disability is a type of personal insurance. It's also a type of group insurance. So are you asking if you can switch group insurance to personal insurance?
Can personal insurance be switched to disability? So maybe within the personal insurance, and Tricia, I'm just taking a guess here, so please feel free to type in to clarify. Can personal insurance be switched to disability? So could you use your personal insurance and get long-term disability through that? That would, I guess, depend on the policy and the plan that you bought.
Exactly, because disability is a type of personal insurance.
Okay. And Taki is asking if we can put up the website as a reference. I think that's on the next slide.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's the OLHI website for anyone who's looking for more information.
Yep. And the other thing you'll find on our website is guides and brochures for each individual product. So the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association is the association that supports the life and health insurance companies. And on their site, they've developed excellent brochures for each of the products in the industry. Take a look at them. They give, I gave an overview today. If I was to go into detail on all of them, we'd be here for days. But the brochures go into a lot more detail, so they're very helpful if you're considering a certain product. I really recommend you read the brochure to get a good understanding of the details.
That's a great resource. Thank you for that. We've got a couple more questions. So the next one is, under which category do health-related, so drug coverage, complaints fall?
That's health, individual health. So health and dental fall under that health coverage. So that would be your prescriptions, it would be, massage, any kind of treatment you get. Also, health and dental is usually sold together. We've often been asked, can I get just dental? Unfortunately, to date, there isn't an insurance company that I know of that offers just dental. It comes as a group.
Okay. Sandra is asking, is there an amount of time that passes after cancer treatment that you may be eligible for life insurance that's not unaffordable? So does that make a difference if you're, post-treatment 10 years, 15, 20 years? Does it then help reduce the cost of your life insurance?
It may very well, yes. And again, it goes back to the insurance company weighing the risk. If it's been 5 years, they might still see some risk there. If it's been 10 years, then obviously that risk diminishes. Each insurance company has their own process for determining the risk involved with issuing a policy. So it's difficult to make a blanket statement because each company goes through their own process to determine that. But yes, again, it's a risk assessment. So the longer you are away from any diagnosis or any treatment, the more stable that you appear. And so, yes, obviously, the less risk that you would pose in insuring.
So it sounds like it would at least be worth, if that's something you're looking at and you don't have life insurance and you like it, as you get farther away from your diagnosis, it may be worth looking into every 5 years or whatnot to see how those rates have changed.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next question from Cheryl is, how does the general individual, so the general population, get to know about you? I would think they would just accept the insurance decision. So how does the general population find out about OLHI? That was one of our biggest struggles, to be honest. But the one agreement we came into with life insurance companies, I'm going to say 5 years ago, is when you're going through the complaint process with your insurance company, they have to tell you about OLHI at 2 different points.
So the first one being when you first enter their complaint resolution process, they send you a letter saying, we received your complaint. By the way, you can go to OLHI for help, and they'll send you our brochure with that letter. And then at the end of the process, when they issue your final position letter, again, they will say, you can now go to OLHI for help if you're not satisfied with our decision. We struggle with hitting the right people, getting the message out to the right people. Because we can do all kinds of media initiatives and expensive marketing plans for consumers at large. But really the people that we need to reach are those who have complaints. Because until you have a complaint, we're really not able to help you. Mm-hmm. So reaching that agreement with the insurance companies has really helped us to reach the right people. And, word of mouth is important too. The other way that we try and get to the right audience is when there's newspaper articles published about insurance industry. We will reach out to reporters and say, look, you're talking about this, that, and the other, but you're not saying that there's somewhere people can go for help. And a lot of times they'll print it, sometimes they don't, but we do as much outreach that way as we can.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, and hopefully things like this webinar will help as well.
Absolutely,
at least inform people that you're there. We do have a question from Erin who says, thank you kindly for this session. The question she has is around the timeline for a case review that she notes is quite lengthy, upwards of 90 days. And for patients with breast cancer, time is not on their side. Is there any way to expedite this process?
Unfortunately, we're at the point now where we've tightened them as much as we can. It used to take a lot longer. We've done a lot of work on our internal process and really, found as many efficiencies as we can. We continue to try and find them. But the process, the risk we run by tightening the timelines is potentially missing something. So when we struggle with doing a thorough review in a timely manner all the time. So it's difficult. One of the things we do when we look at our timelines is we do prioritize disability cases. Because now we're dealing with people who potentially have no income, and so there's a little bit more pressure to get those out. Mm-hmm. But we also can't, take a case and review a case that we got last week when somebody's been waiting 2 months for their decision. So it's a balancing act. We look at our volumes and our timelines and stuff on a weekly basis to see what we can push through. But, we also don't want to rush through it and miss something and say, sorry, we can't help you, when potentially there was the opportunity to negotiate something. Typically, we get our cases out of that initial stage within 90 to 120 days, which if you look at the alternative, which is getting a lawyer and going to court, is still a lot shorter and a lot cheaper.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we have a question specifically around drug coverage. And it's actually two questions. Could an insurance company refuse to cover a drug? For example, a new cancer drug that may be very expensive that's recently been Health Canada approved. And if so, how can I appeal this?
Insurance companies certainly can, as new products come out, determine if they're going to cover them or not. But it depends on the contract. Now, with individual policies, it depends it always depends what was in the contract. Usually there'll be a stipulation in the contract. Now, again, with private policies, it's something that you can potentially negotiate or work out with the insurance company when you're getting the product. But often most of those expenses are paid through by your group insurance coverage. And unfortunately, in those cases, you have no say. It's the employer who's making the decisions. And if it's a new and expensive drug, the employer may decide that the cost to add that coverage will be too much for them. And again, when they first write the contract, a lot of group coverage contracts will have a stipulation where if new drugs come up, what the process is for reviewing and approving them. But adding more coverage to the plan increases the premiums. And if the employer is willing to take on those extra premiums, then great. But if they're not, then chances are they won't cover it. And then there's not much you can do in those situations, unfortunately.
So if the employer agreed to expand the plan essentially so that it would cover those higher drug costs, that may be an option. If you had a conversation with your employer and they were open to that, that might be a way for someone under group insurance to access those medications? Potentially,
yes. It depends how big the organization is too.
Right.
Because they're looking at the coverage not just for you as an individual, but for the policyholders as a whole. So if you've got a small company, the employer's open to that, great. But if you're dealing with a multinational company, your chances of getting to someone who's willing to make those changes is highly unlikely.
Okay. Someone just noted that they tried going to CLHIA.com, but got an error, but the .ca link worked for them. So I'll just note that, the CLHIA.ca, and that should work.
Okay. I'll change that into presentation. Yeah.
Another question that I had previously, and actually, Brigitte, you and I spoke about this earlier, is around travel insurance. And as far as travel insurance for people living with stage 4 breast cancer, oftentimes it's extremely hard to even find that. Do you have any suggestions as far as trying to find travel insurance for people who may have a stable stage 4 breast cancer and who are currently in treatment, but who are healthy and wanting to travel?
Again, I can't make a blanket statement. Every insurance company has their own process for assessing risk. There is one company that we've noticed through the process that seems to be a little bit more open to taking on some of that additional risk, and that would be the cooperators. So if you're going to make a call, I would call them first.
So start with them and hope that you get them, I guess.
They seem to be the company who will take on some of those riskier claims, let's say.
Okay. I just have one more from someone who previously written in, and then we'll see if there's any more actually from anyone participating in the webinar.
Okay.
If my insurance provider doesn't provide a drug I need and my employer decides to change insurance companies to try to find one that will cover what I need, will I be excluded because of pre-existing conditions, or will I be covered because it's part of a group plan?
If it's part of a group plan, the same coverage is extended to all members, so there wouldn't be an exclusion.
Okay.
That's one of the benefits of the group plans, is as long as you're an employee, you're covered.
And you're not having to qualify individually?
Exactly.
Okay.
The only time there's a difference there is in most group plans, they'll offer life insurance. If you opt for additional units, so usually, the most standard one, and they are all different, but the standard out there is they'll give you 1 year's salary if you die. But they'll give you the option to purchase additional units of life insurance. If you opt for those additional units of life insurance, at that point, they'll look at a medical assessment before they agree.
Okay.
But that one-time year salary that comes with the plan, that's yours regardless.
Okay. That's great. I think, and actually we're almost coming up to our hour, so that's worked out really well. We don't have any more questions in the queue. Brigitte, is there anything else that you wanted to add? I think your presentation was really comprehensive, and it was great that we had some time at the end to really answer a broad variety of questions.
I don't think there's anything to add. I thank everyone for their questions. It's difficult to always anticipate what people want to know. So I hope that the presentation has been helpful, and I hope that I've answered your questions. And please, if there's any other questions following the webinar, I'm assuming, Jen, are you okay if they forward them to you?
Absolutely. They can connect with us at cbcn@cbcn.ca,
Okay.
and we'll make sure that we get those answered.
Perfect. And also, I'm going to update the presentation to give a little bit more of the information that was shared through the Q&A, and then pass it on to Jen. So if anybody wants a copy, it'll be available.
That's great. And what we can do is actually we'll be posting the actual webinar on our website, cbcn.ca. And so then what we can do as well, Bridget, is we'll also update the PowerPoint presentation with the additional notes and
Perfect.
slides in it. So anyone looking for more detailed information without having to go through the full webinar again can also do that for anyone participating. So we'll make sure that's available there.
Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Bridget. And again,
My
I'd like
pleasure.
to thank Pfizer Canada for their financial support for this webinar. And on behalf of the Canadian Breast Cancer Network, thank you everyone for joining us today. And hopefully we can connect again soon. We do have webinars throughout the year and in-person events, so you can always check out cbcn.ca and our events page for more information. So on that note, we'll close the webinar. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you again, Jen. Bye-bye.
Take care.